Good morning and welcome to Moments with Melinda. I am your host, Melinda Moulton. And today I have Jayna Ahsaf with me to talk about her Free Vermont campaign. Hi, Jayna, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, Melinda. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad you're here today. And you and I have been in touch. You spoke at our rally back in November. It was
hmm
powerful. You're extraordinary. And then we met again for lunch, and we've had some really good, talks about incarcerated women and what we can do to lighten their lives. So I'm so glad you joined me today. Let me tell my viewers a little bit about you. Jayna Ossoff is the FreeHer Vermont campaign director for the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. She is also a steering committee member for the Vermont Freedom Fund and is on the board for the Will Miller Social Justice Lecture Series. The battle cry for her Free Her campaign is people, not prisons. Would you say that's pretty right on?
Yeah. Yeah, that is excellent. Thank
Okay,
you.
good. So I want to start at the beginning. I want you to share with us a little bit about your childhood growing up.
hmm So, thank you for asking. My experiences definitely shaped me wanting to focus on prison abolition. I grew up in a single parent household. Both sides of my family have struggled intensely with substance use, whether it being alcohol or drugs. And just seeing so many of my family members struggle in that way radicalized me early, I would say, and helped me see more complete pictures of society where there are not many safety nets set up for people. The only kind of institutions we have put in place for folks that are falling through the cracks are emergency departments or prisons. So people aren't getting the tools to not only survive, but to also not thrive. And that was what was particularly painful for me. My family is just, and I may be biased, but I feel like they're brilliant people that had very great futures ahead of them if our communities were set up in a way where the foundation was love and care over punishment and revenge and vengeance. So a lot of the work I do is to try to set up the systems and coordination of care that would have helped them become the best versions of themselves.
So who do you think had the greatest impact on you and the choice that you chose for your career?
That's a great question. I was actually reflecting on this, and maybe not for all the best reasons, but I feel like my father, and I may get emotional, but
It's okay.
yeah, he's struggled with alcohol use my whole life. So I had to learn what it means to unconditionally love someone, even though they're causing harm in our community, causing harm to me. Um, and just like having this abundance of love for a person that isn't able to get on the right track and doesn't have the resources available to pull themselves out of their substance use addiction, whatever folks want to call it. It's created like a painful place in my heart, I'll say, and kind of fueled me to try to find alternatives for him that aren't just like prisons or emergency departments. So,
Is your dad still alive?
yeah, but he's still drinking
He's still struggling.
heavily.
Well,
Yeah.
just to share with you, and my viewers, my mother was an alcoholic. She died at 40 and I was 12.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
can totally, relate to what you're talking about. And I've been a teetotaler for probably most of my adult life. Uh,
hmm
as a result, not all of it, which which always got me in trouble, but most of it. And I'm with you on this, Jayna, in a very
Yeah.
spiritual way. All right, so let's talk about um, why do you believe that in our country and in our state we need women need to be incarcerated? I mean, when do we need to begin to view and treat women who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated with a bigger heart and a larger lens? I mean, when is that going to happen?
hmm And that's, what I would say is one of the most important pieces of work we do as FreeHer Vermont is introduce humanizing narratives around who's incarcerated in Vermont and across the country. We have been peddled fear-mongering information about who's in prisons. We're indoctrinated basically at birth, from Paw Patrol to these CSI special investigation units that are sensationalizing the worst kind of harm that's happening across the country. Same with media outlets. So people's natural perception of crime is that high levels of harm is happening everywhere all the time, which in actuality, it's a very small percentage happening. And when we dig into who's actually in prison, a majority of time they're either struggling in poverty, struggling with substance use, struggling with mental illness, or a combination of all three, or a combination of two. And specifically with women, the pathways into prison are very easy to explain. Like looking at Vermont in our women's prison, 95% of those women are survivors of domestic or sexual violence,
Mm.
meaning there is a very clear trauma to prison pipeline that no one is talking about in these conversations. And looking even further, like in California, they have this extremely disturbing statistic that 70% of their prison population consists of people who are in foster care.
Mm.
So when you start looking at these data pieces, you start to see that the real picture here is that people that end up in prison are folks that do not have access to supports, do not have family, have been traumatized and victimized at very young ages. There were no interventions, so they were just put in situations where the kind of harm they were able to commit is escalated because they've had to be in situations to protect themselves, or they were being human trafficked, or the list goes on. So I guess the most important thing I would say is to remember the people in prisons are victims usually 10 out of 10 times themselves, and to not forget that no one wakes up wanting to be violent. That
Yeah.
usually people's introduction to violent is someone committing it to them.
And trauma. So I know
Mhm.
that you've spoken out against the new prison. How far are you along with that? Is this thing a fait accompli? Is it done? Is it a done deal? Or are you still out there fighting against the new prison?
I would say we still have many possible angles. I don't want to give out all our secret tactics, but there are multiple points of intervention we've identified to slow down this prison project. And usually bureaucracy is not an organizer's best friend, but in this case it is. The Department of Corrections has to request a zoning request change in Essex. It's currently not zoned to build prisons, and that's where they're looking at two possible sites for this replacement women's prison. And this permitting process will most likely take at least a few years. So right now we are focusing on the very local Essex Planning Commission and trying to let them know why this is not a good idea. They don't have the power to kill the project. What they do is they send a recommendation to the select board, but we're just doing the preliminary steps to make sure that recommendation is a no. So when we go to the select board, our work isn't as intense, but yes, we have a few ideas up our sleeve and we're
Good for
very
you.
excited. Yeah.
For you. So I understand the main prison model that Vermont
Mhm.
aims to mimic is being dismantled. I mean, don't you think it's ridiculous if Vermont would be looking at a system that's being, demolished? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so we have sisters on the ground in Maine who were formerly incarcerated in this prison, and I think it was an op-ed from last year I put out. I have a quote from the executive director, Linda Smalls, of she's sister Reentry Sisters, sorry, Reentry Sisters. And she was talking about how a number of the staff that were putting in these gender responsive reforms have been fired. Like a lot of the things are just reverting back to the status quo. And when Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, our Vermont women's prison, was first being proposed in 1974, we saw this kind of similar rhetoric. It's going to be the most progressive prison in the country. It's going to be a community model without walls. And similarly, this model fell apart within a few years. So, with our beautiful historians, organizers, I would say they've been doing really good tracking of projects, not only in Vermont, but across the country. And this is just honestly the MO of state governments, of the Department of Corrections, to be touting these prison projects as something they're not, to be trying to say, like, oh, we are going to be on the forefront of change for corrections. Like, this is it. This is the most progressive model. Um, and that's just dangerous for many reasons. We see them almost trying to rebrand incarceration as a source of care and like they are taking resources from community and putting them into like substance use programming behind bars, job preparation behind bars, which, in theory is good, but also creates a dangerous situation where people have to become criminalized to receive care. They need felony records or they need to be in on misdemeanors just to receive substance use care for the first time or mental health care, which we don't agree with. And sorry if I strayed too off of
No,
your
no,
question here.
no, that
Okay.
was so well done. So my next
Okay.
question falls right in there. There's two of them. How should Vermont be looking at housing women who are now being incarcerated? And is there a more humane way to look at women in prison? I mean, how do we lift them up and help them to move through the stigma of trauma?
Yes. So I would say the first thing is we have really innovative alternatives available at our fingertips here in Vermont. I'm not sure if folks are familiar with Pathways Vermont or Jenna's Promise, but they have, oh my gosh, I just have to put this out here. Everyone needs to go down to Jenna's Promise. I left that place in tears because it just filled me with so much inspiration and hope for the future. So I'll start with them. They
So,
look at,
I just want to share with you that they've asked me to speak in September.
oh,
So
beautiful.
I hope you come up while when I do my presentation.
Okay, I
Okay.
will. I
Okay.
definitely will, Melinda.
So
I will be there.
continue on,
Okay.
my dear. Continue on.
Yes. So Jenna's Promise is this beautiful place that really tackles reentry holistically. It's in Johnson, and they have three-tiered levels of housing. And another beautiful aspect of their reentry is they know healing isn't linear. So you can move up or down depending on what your needs are, depending on what your circumstances are. So, yes, three-tiered housing options based on the kind of support you need. In addition, they have on-site, they own a few local businesses. There's a coffee shop, they do coffee distribution, and then they have like a recycled furniture store. And women can actually gain experience working in these shops. Another beautiful aspect is they know not everyone wants to do this. So they'll match you with people in the trade you want to gain experience in, whether you want to be a teacher or a hairstylist. They match you with people to help you learn these skills. And then they have a community center, they have a gym, there's yoga. They understand that you have to engage a human's mind, soul, heart to really get them out of the trauma that led to incarceration. So, right away, our volunteers, if we had a Jenna's Promise in every county, we wouldn't need prisons in
Well,
our,
I think they would like to see that.
yeah.
Think Jenna's Promise would like to do. Well, why isn't the state of Vermont adopting that type of program and funding the opportunity? Because I don't know what it costs for every woman who's behind bars, but it must
Hmm.
be close to 60 or $70,000 a year. So why wouldn't the state be adopting something like this program and instituting it?
Hmm. So, yes, it is $95,000 per year to incarcerate a woman baseline. That excludes people who are pregnant, people who are elderly or chronically ill. Um, my feeling is, a lot of government, there's fear and there's not a radical imagination. And that's, I think, one of the most sinister aspects of capitalism. It's taken away our ability to dream and imagine and think about what else is possible besides all these ingrained institutions that have kind of been controlling us since the United States inception. So I would say, you know, politicians move at the pace of their constituents. So we need this to be more of like a mainstream idea that their constituents are bought into right now we have so many competing crises in Vermont that I feel our politicians don't think this is a priority. But if we, so this new women's prison is going to cost $97 million. dollars.
Oh,
If if we build Jenna's promises across the state instead, think about how many resources will be freed up to use in education and housing support. And when
so
you count, oh,
so how
sorry,
can
yeah.
we, I'm so,
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
tingling. Because my thought was always that we take over some of the colleges that are shutting down, them into this.
Yes.
So this is so on key with where I'm at. How do we get into making this happen? I mean, what do my viewers need to do?
Mm-hmm.
How do we create the the human force to put this out
Mm-hmm.
in front of our legislators? What can we do?
That is a great question. So we've been starting to put the pressure. We're part of this interesting space called the DOC stakeholder meetings, where us, the Department of Corrections, contracted service providers, advocacy groups like the ACLU, actors from the judicial system, we're all kind of thrown in this space to grapple with the questions around the replacement prison. And so we testified to House Corrections about an update. And something I just entered into the conversation is, and maybe I should take a couple steps back here.
Okay,
So the prison construction project, right now they want 128 beds for a secure side, which is like the traditional prisons we think of, and then 30 beds for a reentry facility, which sounds good in theory, but they want the reentry facility to still be run by the Department of Corrections. Right now, we're trying to push for that reentry facility to be run by contracted partners like the Network Against Domestic Violence, Vermont Works for Women, Mercy Connections, those amazing folks that have been in the prison for decades. And we feel like this could create a very great opening for moving us away from incarceration. If the state allows them to run that reentry facility, we study outcomes for 5 years. I think that would give politicians the, I guess, proof that alternatives work. And what folks can do to help us is write their legislators. I don't think the governor's listening to many of us, but if you want to reach out to the governor, please do. But I would say, write your legislators, say, hey, these are conversations that, as your constituent, I would like you to be having. Please engage human services. Please engage House Judiciary. Because that's another issue is our state legislature is so siloed that we're not able to get the right players in the room to think about what a just transition away from incarceration would look like. So, one, we need buy-in from politicians and we need appropriations.
so
We need
Jana,
funding.
so on your website, and tell our viewers what website they should go to. But do you have templates of what people can write or information for people on how to keep pushing this forward in state government? And what is the website that you would like my viewers to go to?
Yes, you can visit us at nationalcouncil.us/Vermont. And let me just double
Say it
check that.
again, so people national
Yeah, okay. Okay. It's actually the council.us/Vermont. That might be the
council.us dot.
/Vermont.
So is there a gov in there?
No,
So it's just
dot
council
US.
dot US backslash Vermont. Okay. So
Yes.
council dot US backslash Vermont to my viewers. And is there a place there where my viewers can be educated on how to, I'd love to sit down and work with you to write up an editorial on this. I think it's fascinating. But at the end of the day, is there a way for my viewers to learn or to garner some information on how they can get involved to move the needle on this?
Yes, so the legislative session just ended, so we're updating some of our tools and scripts, but go back in like a couple days and at the bottom there will be a link for our action tool and also a manual like Google Drive you can just go through and look at some language.
Perfect.
And also, if you want, just feel free to email us at Vermont at thecouncil.us. And I'm more than happy to meet with folks one on one to talk through this more. I will even meet with your state reps or senators with you, like whatever folks like to do to engage in
Great.
advocacy. And if you live in Essex, it would be great if you talk to planning commission members and select board members.
Thank you, Jayna. That's important. All right, to my viewers, you've got that. Go to council.us/Vermont. This show is going to run for the next probably few months. It's going to be syndicated across the state. So this information is going to be critical. So, Jayna, isn't it true that some women are in prison because of the men that they associated with?
Yes, that, thank you, Melinda. That is an extremely important point here, is we don't consider how many women and people in CRCF have been forced to engage in criminalized behavior. So many women are victims or still surviving human trafficking. And that's another thing I don't think our state has enough information about what that actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. You can be forced to do drug deals on behalf of the person trafficking you,
Can be
or
a
go
mule.
and
Yeah.
exactly, you could be a mule, or you could be forced to engage in like petty theft to support them.
You don't get beaten. I mean, you can,
Exactly.
yeah, so you don't get beaten up. You're
Mm-hmm.
forced to do things that you would never do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And it's really sad that that's not a consideration that our prison system takes into account, that these folks either had to choose between engaging in criminalized behavior or
Or being
physical
raped,
violence.
abused.
Yes, yeah.
And let me add, is it not true that when women are incarcerated, they lose their children? They often lose their families and their spouses because they're abandoned, which happens much less to men when they go to jail. But when women go to jail, people tend to turn their backs on them. Is that not true?
That is exactly true, and one of the main reasons why our founders at the National Council felt it was so important to focus specifically on women's incarceration, because when women leave the household, and this is not like to be sexist, this is a true fact, like women most often hold down whole households.
And you can't be sexist against women. I mean, or
Yeah,
men. I'm sorry.
yeah.
I mean I mean that's like yeah, I mean that's like white men trying to be, part of the reverse race.
Yeah,
That,
thank
no,
you.
no.
Good
Yeah,
point.
no, no.
Yeah.
So how many women are incarcerated in Vermont right now, Jayna?
So I can look at the population totals for today, but usually it hovers around 120 to 130. But we've been seeing that number jump up with the migrant detentions. And this is probably something very important to say. In May alone, there were 80 ICE detainees moved through Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, and they accounted for half of the prison's bookings in
Oh,
May alone. So that's another important piece here. Like when we're talking about who's in prison, right now it is migrants that are confused and have no idea what's going on, that don't have the best translation services. So yeah, our prisons are being used as a tool to help this administration with its agenda.
so I understand that 95% of women in Vermont prisons have probably experienced some violence in those prisons,
Hmm.
right?
Yes, that data statistic is actually from the Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. They did a survey in the prison, and they suspect that number is closer to 100%. But
So,
yeah.
Jane, I also understand that women are not allowed to leave prison unless they have housing. So their sentences are prolonged. I mean, how is this fair?
So for some folks, it can be a condition of their release to have approved housing. And it's up to the Department of Correction if they have the discretion over whether something is approved housing or not. So I don't have numbers specifically for the women's prison, but I know system wide there's over 120 people being held in prison
I mean,
because they don't have a
I would
place to
rather
stay.
live in a Vermont forest in a tent with a sleeping bag than be in prison and work it all out, or
Yeah.
but to keep people in prison because and have it be a condition. Let's talk about the FreeHer Vermont and the Pathways Vermont program. And to
Hmm.
my viewers, the website is freehercampaign.org. And the National Council for Incarcerated Women and Formerly Incarcerated Women is the nationalcouncil.us. And if you /Vermont, it comes up. So we talked about that. So I want
Hmm.
my viewers to visit those websites. And by the way, and if you support the work that Jayna is sharing here, I would love you all to make a donation. No donation is too small, and you will find that. So what are your hopes and dreams for women in Vermont who find themselves caught in this web of prosecution? how can we as a society change our views and find the compassion and love that is required to lift these women out of trauma and provide them with the tools and support to make a new life for themselves? How do we, watching this
Hmm.
program, what can we do? And talk to us about what is being done.
Hmm. Well, first I would say there's this great quote. I'm sorry I don't know who it's from, but the first revolution is internal. So I would challenge everyone to start practicing abolition in their daily lives. And for us to live in a truly free world, we have to change how responsible we feel towards each other and the amount of love and care we give towards each other. So I would ask next time you walk past a woman or anyone, asking for money or someone in crisis, instead of ignoring them because it makes you uncomfortable, maybe go up to them, ask them what they need, or join an organization that's doing this direct support because we need much more capacity. We need a lot of people to step up as leaders. And a lot of the change we need happens from us changing the type of relationships we have with each other. So I would say, leading with love and getting involved is the first piece here. And then for folks that maybe have more access to power, like, do you own a business that can employ formerly incarcerated women? Do you have maybe the financial ability to give out scholarships for formerly incarcerated women to attend school? Do you have an extra house that maybe you can rent to them for no money or little to no money? There's a lot of ways we can all share our resources, whether that's emotional resources, material resources, to lift everybody up.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Because how do we shift to identifying a root cause approach that provides real change in women's lives to lift them up and out of the path of crime? I mean, as a society, I mean, right now, the whole thing in Burlington,
Mm-hmm.
where people are afraid to go into Burlington and, they feel that there's, too many people walking the streets that they don't want to
Yeah.
associate with. And I mean, I try to get into Burlington at least 3 or 4 times a week to support the businesses, but there is a stigma, and a lot of it has to do with mental health and substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So how do people get their heads around that rather than crossing the street and feeling, you know, whatever word you want to use when they see that, as opposed to wanting to put out a hand and help? I mean, how do
Yeah.
we teach humans to do that?
Yeah, once again, that is some of the trickiest parts of our work is helping people unlearn this individualistic culture we've been ingrained into where we see suffering as a result of someone's own failings. And we need a reframe where when we see someone suffering, we have to understand that that's a societal failure, not an individual failure. And I know this is extremely hard work, but
Mhm.
for us, how we've started to tackle it is redefining what safety is and trying to name what creates illusions of safety versus true safety. These prisons where we can invisibilize people, where they're out of sight, out of mind, that isn't true safety. It's a temporary band-aid solution. But if we get folks engaged in substance use treatment, if we connect them with a caseworker and a therapist, that is a long-term solution that will actually lift people out of these circumstances and change downtown for the better. And I think that's the problem. We have these knee-jerk reactions to go to policing and prisons when we feel unsafe instead of funding communities. Um, and, we try to have events to let people know, like, that's something I actually want to talk to you about. Kennedy was like, maybe not the best place to talk about this on your radio show, but Kennedy was thinking about having some kind of resource fair downtown where we connect organizations and people with services, where we can start modeling what
Who was
alternative
coming up with
society.
that? Who was coming up with that?
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Jensen?
Oh, Kennedy
Yes,
Jensen. Oh
Kennedy,
my God. So
yeah.
are you working with Kennedy?
Yeah, I met with her a couple weeks ago, and yeah, we actually wanted to circle back and talk to you about this like resource fair
Oh,
idea.
please,
So
please, please. We have to do that. And also, her data is phenomenal.
I know she
Mine
sent it
is
along.
her data.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you said Kennedy. I'm thinking, oh, not RFK. I mean, oh my God, it's one of my favorite humans on the planet. Well,
Yeah.
keep going, Okay, so
Yes. So like I feel like we need to start modeling what alternative cultures are, alternative societies, and just like the right way of being in relationship with each other. So that's how we're trying to tackle this. But yeah, we encourage people to do their own work, trying to really understand what causes people to struggle isn't because of their individual failures. It's
Their trauma
us.
and their substance abuse. I mean, like my mother, your father. I mean,
Yeah.
and my it just and it's hard to for human beings to find that compassion when there's that type of suffering going on.
Hmm.
And I just don't think that we're doing enough in society to deal with that. We're really failing. We're the richest country in the world, and we're failing the most needy. And that's just disgusting. And
Agreed.
the work that you're doing, Jayna Ahsaf, is just extraordinary. You're one of the most brilliant young women I know. I mean, you and Kennedy, my God, what a team. You'll never, and I got to tell you, I'm gonna get you back again. But I want to thank you for all that you do. I mean, you are such an inspiration, and you're always a delight to talk to. And I will be following your work. And I want to jump in with what you and Kennedy are doing, and get in there in whatever way that you need, because what you're doing is vital, and it's
Thank you.
important to create more love in Vermont for the people that really need it. So thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you, Melinda. I appreciate you sharing your platform, and you've just been like great energy every time I see you, and it's great to be connected and in
Thank
community
you. Well,
with
we're
you.
connected in a
Yeah.
big way. There's some kind of soul connection. And to my
Yeah.
wonderful viewers, I want to thank you for joining me and Jayna Asif today. And next time you walk down Church Street, or you're in Burlington, or wherever you are, and you see someone sitting there on the street who's homeless, um, don't forget to say hello, how are you? And reach
Hmm.
out and give some beautiful energy. And whether you can give money or not, I don't know if that's in your heart, but at least acknowledge them as human beings and treat them with an open heart, because they need that. And that will
Hmm.
make their day. So thank you for that. All right, my dear. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll get you back on the show. And to my viewers, have a great day. It's sunny outside. It's almost summer, and I want you to get out there and enjoy Vermont. We'll be back soon with a new show. Thank you so much. Bye bye.